Government is an evil, it is only the thoughtlessness and vices of men that make it a necessary evil. When all men are good and wise, government will of itself decay. First our pleasures die, and then our hopes, and then our fears, and when these are dead, the debt is due, dust claims dust, and we die too. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? Nothing wilts faster than laurels that have been rested upon. Oh, wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? A man, to be greatly good, must imagine intensely and comprehensively. He must put himself in the place of another and of many others. The pains and pleasures of his species must become his own. I have drunken deep of joy, and I will taste no other wine tonight. Change is certain. Peace is followed by disturbances, departure of evil men by their return. Such recurrences should not constitute occasions for sadness but realities for awareness, so that one may be happy in the interim. When my cats aren't happy, I'm not happy. Not because I care about their mood but because I know they're just sitting there thinking up ways to get even. Man has no right to kill his brother. It is no excuse that he does so in uniform, he only adds the infamy of servitude to the crime of murder. Fear not for the future, weep not for the past. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. A poet is a nightingale, who sits in darkness and sings to cheer its own solitude with sweet sounds. War is the statesman's game, the priest's delight, the lawyer's jest, the hired assassin's trade. History is a cyclic poem written by time upon the memories of man. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. We look before and after, and pine for what is not, our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught, our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. Obscenity, which is ever blasphemy against the divine beauty in life, is a monster for which the corruption of society forever brings forth new food, which it devours in secret. There is a harmony in autumn, and a luster in its sky, which through the summer is not heard or seen, as if it could not be, as if it had not been. The more we study, the more we discover our ignorance. All of us who are worth anything, spend our manhood in unlearning the follies, or expiating the mistakes of our youth. In a drama of the highest order there is little food for censure or hatred. It teaches rather self-knowledge and self-respect. Poetry is a sword of lightning, ever unsheathed, which consumes the scabbard that would contain it. Man's yesterday may never be like his morrow, not may endure but mutability. Poetry is a mirror which makes beautiful that which is distorted. There is no real wealth but the labor of man. The pleasure that is in sorrow is sweeter than the pleasure of pleasure itself. Revenge is the naked idol of the worship of a semi-barbarous age. Poetry lifts the veil from the hidden beauty of the world, and makes familiar objects be as if they were not familiar. Music, when soft voices die, vibrates in the memory. Death is the veil which those who live call life. They sleep, and it is lifted. Poetry is the record of the best and happiest moments of the happiest and best minds. Only nature knows how to justly proportion to the fault the punishment it deserves. Love is free. To promise forever to love the same woman is not less absurd than to promise to believe the same creed. Such a vow in both cases excludes us from all inquiry. The great instrument of moral good is the imagination. Is it not odd that the only generous person I ever knew, who had money to be generous with, should be a stockbroker? Tragedy delights by affording a shadow of the pleasure which exists in pain. When a thing is said to be not worth refuting, you may be sure that either it is flagrantly stupid, in which case all comment is superfluous, or it is something formidable, the very crux of the problem. The man of virtuous soul commands not, nor obeys. Concerning God, free will and destiny, of all that earth has been or yet may be, all that vain men imagine or believe, or hope can paint or suffering may achieve, we descanted. I think that the leaf of a tree, the meanest insect on which we trample, are in themselves arguments more conclusive than any which can be adduced that some vast intellect animates infinity. Reason respects the differences, and imagination the similitudes of things. Then black despair, the shadow of a starless night, was thrown over the world in which I moved alone. It is easier to suppose that the universe has existed for all eternity than to conceive a being beyond its limits capable of creating it. Monarchy is only the string that ties the robber's bundle. Music, when soft voices die, vibrates in the memory. Odors, when sweet violets sicken, live within the sense they quicken. Obscenity, which is ever blasphemy against the divine beauty in life, is a monster for which the corruption of society forever brings forth new food, which it devours in secret. Hail to thee, blithe spirit! Bird thou never wert, that from heaven, or near it, pourest thy full heart in profuse strains of unpremeditated art. Here I swear, and as I break my oath may eternity blast me, here I swear that never will I forgive Christianity. It is the only point on which I allow myself to encourage revenge. Oh, how I wish I were the Antichrist, that it were mine to crush the demon, to hurl him to his native hell never to rise again. I expect to gratify some of this insatiable feeling in poetry. We look before and after, and pine for what is not, our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught, our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. Kings are like stars, they rise and set, they have the worship of the world, but no repose. Life may change, but it may fly not, hope may vanish, but can die not, truth be veiled, but still it burneth, love repulsed, but it returneth. Peace, peace. He is not dead, he doth not sleep, he hath awakened from the dream of life. 'Tis we, who lost in stormy visions, keep with phantoms in unprofitable strife. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thoughts. Man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow, naught may endure but mutability. Who killed Johnny Keats? I, said the Quarterly, so savage and tartarly, 'twas one of my feats. Winter is come and gone, but grief returns with the revolving year. Though we eat little flesh and drink no wine, yet let's be merry, we'll have tea and toast, custards for supper, and an endless host of syllabubs and jellies and mince pies, and other such ladylike luxuries. There is no sport in hate when all the rage is on one side. What 'twas weak to do 'tis weaker to lament, once being done. Every epoch, under names more or less specious, has deified its peculiar errors. The sunlight claps the earth and the moonbeams kiss the sea, what are all these kissings worth if thou kiss not me? A sensitive plant in a garden grew, and the young winds fed it with silver dew, and it opened its fan-like leaves to the light, and closed them beneath the kisses of night. As a bankrupt thief turns thief-taker, so an unsuccessful author turns critic. A wild dissolving bliss over my frame he breathed, approaching near, and bent his eyes of kindling tenderness near mine, and on my lips impressed a lingering kiss. The unquiet republic of the maze of planets, struggling fierce towards heaven's free wilderness. There was no corn in the wide marketplace, all loathliest things, even human flesh, was sold. They weighed in small scales, and many a face was fixed in eager horror then, his gold the miser brought, the tender maid, grown bold through hunger, bared her scorned charms in vain. All of us, who are worth anything, spend our manhood in unlearning the follies, or expiating the mistakes of our youth. It might make one in love with death, to be buried in so sweet a place. They learn in suffering what they teach in song. Heaven's ebon vault, studded with stars unutterably bright, through which the moon's unclouded grandeur rolls, seems like a canopy which love has spread to curtain her sleeping world. All love is sweet, given or returned. Common as light is love, and its familiar voice wearies not ever. They who inspire is most are fortunate, as I am now, but those who feel it most are happier still. The gigantic shadows which futurity casts upon the present. Life and the world, or whatever we call that which we are and feel, is an astonishing thing. The mist of familiarity obscures from us the wonder of our being. We are struck with admiration at some of its transient modifications, but it is itself the great miracle. See the mountains kiss high heaven and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother, and the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What is all this sweet work worth if thou kiss not me? As long as skies are blue, and fields are green, evening must usher night, night urge the morrow, month follow month with woe, and year wake year to sorrow. The sunlight claps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What are all these kissings worth, if thou kiss not me? Poetry loves philosophy. The fountains mingle with the river and the rivers with the ocean. The winds of heaven mix forever with a sweet emotion. Nothing in the world is single, all things by a law divine in one another's being mingle. Why not I with thine? See the mountains kiss high heaven, and the waves clasp one another. No sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother, and the sunlight clasps the earth, and the moonbeams kiss the sea. What are all these kissings worth, if thou kiss not me? Music, when soft voices die, vibrates in the memory. Odors, when sweet violets sicken, live within the sense they quicken. Rose leaves, when the rose is dead, are heaped for the beloved's bed, and so thy thoughts, when thou art gone, love itself shall slumber on. God is represented as infinite, eternal, incomprehensible. He is contained under every predicate in none that the logic of ignorance could fabricate. He wanders, like a day-appearing dream, through the dim wildernesses of the mind, through desert woods and tracts, which seem like ocean, homeless, boundless, unconfined. Poet's food is love and fame. The great secret of morals is love, or a going out of our own nature, and an identification of ourselves with the beautiful which exists in thought, action, or person, not our own. What is life? Thoughts and feelings arise, with or without our will, and we employ words to express them. We are born, and our birth is unremembered, and our infancy remembered, but in fragments. We live on, and in living we lose the apprehension of life. How vain is it to think that words can penetrate the mystery of our being. Rightly used they may make evident our ignorance of ourselves, and this is much. The mind in creation is as a fading coal, which some invisible influence, like an inconstant wind, awakens to transitory brightness. This power arises from within. Could this influence be durable in its original purity and force, it is impossible to predict the greatness of the result, but when composition begins, inspiration is already on the decline, and the most glorious poetry that has been communicated to the world is probably a feeble shadow of the original conceptions of the poet. For love and beauty and delight, there is no death nor change. Thus suicidal selfishness, that blights the fairest feelings of the opening heart, is destined to decay, whilst from the soil shall spring all virtue, all delight, all love, and judgment cease to wage unnatural war with passion's unsubduable array. What if English toil and blood was poured forth, even as a flood? It availed, O, liberty, to dim, but not extinguish thee. The cloud of mind is discharging its collected lightning. I fall upon the thorns of life. Forget the dead, the past. Oh, yet there are ghosts that may take revenge for it, memories that make the heart a tomb, regrets which gild through the spirit's gloom, and with ghastly whispers tell that joy, once lost, is pain. Soul meets soul on lovers' lips. Know what it is to be a child. It is to be something very different from the man of today. It is to have a spirit yet streaming from the waters of baptism. It is to believe in belief. It is to be so little that elves can reach to whisper in your ear. It is to turn pumpkins into coaches, and mice into horses, lowness into loftiness, and nothing into everything, for each child had its fairy godmother in its soul. Hail to thee, blithe spirit! Chastity is a monkish and evangelical superstition, a greater foe to natural temperance even than unintellectual sensuality. It strikes at the root of all domestic happiness, and consigns more than half of the human race to misery. There is a harmony Indiana autumn, and a luster in its sky. In the infancy of society every author is necessarily a poet. A system could not well have been devised more studiously hostile to human happiness than marriage. I stood within the city disinterred, and heard the autumnal leaves like light footfalls of spirits passing through the streets, and heard the mountain's slumberous voice at intervals thrill through those roofless halls. The oracular thunder penetrating shook the listening soul in my suspended blood. The psychological and moral comfort of a presence at once humble and understanding. This is the greatest benefit that the dog has bestowed upon man. At the very time that philosophers of the most enterprising benevolence were founding in Greece those institutions which have rendered it the wonder and luminary of the world, am I required to believe that the weak and wicked king of an obscure and barbarous nation, a murderer, a traitor, and a tyrant, was the man after God's own heart? Every fanatic or enemy of virtue is not at liberty to misrepresent the greatest geniuses and most heroic defenders of all that is valuable in this mortal world. No one has yet been found resolute enough in dogmatizing to deny that nature made man equal. That society has destroyed this equality is a truth not more incontrovertible. Power, like a desolating pestilence, pollutes whatever it touches, and obedience, bane of all genius, virtue, freedom, truth, makes slaves of men, and of the human frame a mechanized automaton. He hath awakened from the dream of life. Just a tender sense of my own process, that holds something of my connection with the divine. I love tranquil solitude. The moon of Muhammad arose, and it shall set, while, blazoned as on heaven's immortal noon, the cross leads generations on. The wise want love, and those who love want wisdom. Senseless is the breast and cold which relenting love would fold, bloodless are the veins and chill which the pulse of pain did fill. Every little living nerve that from bitter words did swerve round the tortured lips and brow, are like sapless leaflets now frozen upon December's bough. All spirits are enslaved which serve things evil. Twin sister of religion, selfishness. When a man marries, dies, or turns Hindu, his best friends hear no more of him. It is true that the reluctance to abstain from animal food, in those who have been long accustomed to its stimulus, is so great in some persons of weak minds, as to be scarcely overcome, but this is far from bringing any argument in its favor. It is found easier, by the short-sighted victims of disease, to palliate their torments by medicine, than to prevent them by regimen. The most fertile districts of the habitable globe are now actually cultivated by men for animals, at a delay and waste of aliment absolutely incapable of calculation. By all that is sacred in our hope for the human race, I conjure those who love happiness and truth to give a fair trial to the vegetable system. There is no disease, bodily or mental, which adoption of vegetable diet and pure water has not infallibly mitigated, wherever the experiment has been fairly tried. It were much better that a sentient being should never have existed, than that it should have existed only to endure unmitigated misery. I could lie down like a tired child, and weep away the life of care which I have borne, and yet must bear. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean, where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams beside a pumice isle in Bysshe Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers so sweet, the sense faints picturing them. The good want power, but to weep barren tears. The powerful goodness want, worse need for them. The wise want love, and those who love want wisdom. A lovely lady, garmented in light from her own beauty. For this is the most civil sort of lie that can be given to a man's face. I now say what I think. His fine wit makes such a wound, the knife is lost in it. Most wretched men are cradled into poetry by wrong, they learn in suffering what they teach in song. Hell is a city much like London, a populous and smoky city. I love tranquil solitude and such society as is quiet, wise, and good. I am the daughter of earth and water, and the nursling of the sky. I pass through the pores of the ocean and shores, I change, but I cannot die. Kings are like stars, they rise and set, they have the worship of the world, but no repose. Constancy has nothing virtuous in itself, independently of the pleasure it confers, and partakes of the temporizing spirit of vice in proportion as it endures tamely moral defects of magnitude in the object of its indiscreet choice. To be omnipotent but friendless is to reign. It were as wise to cast a violet into a crucible that you might discover the formal principle of its color and odor, as seek to transfuse from one language into another the creations of a poet. The plant must spring again from its seed, or it will bear no flower, and this is the burthen of the curse of Babel. Rulers, who neither see, nor feel, nor know, but leech-like to their fainting country cling, till they drop, blind in blood, without a blow, a people starved and stabbed in the untilled field. Poets, not otherwise than philosophers, painters, sculptors, and musicians, are, in one sense, the creators, and, in another, the creations, of their age. Many a green owl needs must be in the deep wide sea of misery, or the mariner, worn and wan, never thus could voyage on. If certain critics were as clear-sighted as they are malignant, how great would be the benefit to be derived from their writings. It is a modest creed, and yet pleasant if one considers it, to own that death itself must be, like all the rest, a mockery. Sometimes the devil is a gentleman. Can man be free if woman be a slave? Religion pervades intensely the whole frame of society, and is according to the temper of the mind which it inhabits, a passion, a persuasion, an excuse, a refuge, never a check. I never was attached to that great sect, whose doctrine is that each one should select out of the crowd a mistress or a friend, and all the rest, though fair and wise, commend to cold oblivion. That sweet sleep which medicines all pain. Worlds on worlds are rolling ever from creation to decay, like the bubbles on a river sparkling, bursting, borne away. Deep truth is imageless. Mild as the slow necessity of death, the tranquil spirit veils beneath its grasp, without a groan, almost without a fear, resigned in peace to the necessity, calm as a voyager to some distant land, and full of wonder, full of hope as he. Know ye what it is to be a child? It is to have a spirit yet streaming from the waters of baptism. It is to believe in love, to believe in loveliness, to believe in belief. 'Tis he, arrayed in the soft light of his own smiles, which spread like radiance from the cloud-surrounded moon. Those who inflict must suffer, for they see the work of their own hearts, and this must be our chastisement or recompense. Men must reap the things they sow, force from force must ever flow. The awful shadow of some unseen power floats, though unseen, amongst us. A leopard-like spirit, beautiful and swift. Truth has always been found to promote the best interests of mankind. Thou paradise of exiles, Italy. Underneath day's azure eyes, ocean's nursling, Venice lies, a peopled labyrinth of walls, Amphitrite's destined halls. What do you think? Young women of rank eat, you will never guess what, garlic. I have been a wanderer among distant fields. I have sailed down mighty rivers. Ike thee to those in sorrow, comes to bid a sweet good morrow to the rough year just awake in its cradle on the break. The brightest hour of unborn spring, through the winter wandering, found, it seems, the halcyon morn to her February born. February. Bending from heaven, in azure mirth, it kissed the forehead of the earth, and smiled upon the silent sea, and bade the frozen streams be free, and waked to music all their fountains, and breathed upon the frozen mountains. The cloud shadows of midnight possessed their own repose. That orbed maiden, with white fire laden, whom mortals call the moon. Far clouds of feathery gold, shaded with deepest purple, gleam like islands on a dark blue sea. What are numbers knit by force or custom? Man who man would be, must rule the empire of himself, in it must be supreme, establishing his throne on vanquished will, quelling the anarchy of hopes and fears, being himself alone. Tease, where small talk dies in agonies. Power, like a desolating pestilence, pollutes whatever it touches. Cold hopes swarm like worms within our living clay. Through the sunset of hope, like the shapes of a dream, what paradise islands of glory gleam. To hope till hope creates from its own wreck the thing it contemplates. But hope will make thee young, for hope and youth are children of one mother, even love. Love, from its awful throne of patient power in the wise heart, from the last giddy hour of dread endurance, from the slippery, steep, and narrow verge of crag-like agony, springs and folds over the world its healing wings. And bid them love each other and be blessed, and leave the troop which errs, and which reproves, and come and be my guest, for I am love's. I love love, though he has wings, and like light can flee, but above all other things, Spirit, I love thee, thou art love and life. Oh come, make once more my heart thy home. In proportion to the love existing among men, so will be the community of property and power. Among true and real friends, all is common, and, were ignorance and envy and superstition banished from the world, all mankind would be friends. The only perfect and genuine republic is that which comprehends every living being. Those distinctions which have been artificially set up, of nations, societies, families, and religions, are only general names, expressing the abhorrence and contempt with which men blindly consider their fellow men. Love's pestilence, and her slow dogs of war. Poetry, in a general sense, may be defined to be the expression of the imagination, and poetry is connate with the origin of man. I consider poetry very subordinate to moral and political science. Poets are the hierophants of an unapprehended inspiration, the mirrors of the gigantic shadows which futurity casts upon the present, the words which express what they understand not, the trumpets which sing to battle, and feel not what they inspire, the influence which is moved not, but moves. Poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. A God made by man undoubtedly has need of man to make himself known to man. And priests dare babble of a God of peace, even whilst their hands are red with guiltless blood, murdering the while, uprooting every germ of truth, exterminating, spoiling all, making the earth a slaughter house. Worse than despair, worse than the bitterness of death, is hope. The flood of time is rolling on, we stand upon its brink, whilst they are gone to glide in peace down death's mysterious stream. Have ye done well? Fate, time, occasion, chance, and change. To these all things are subject but eternal love. Had this author, Sir W. Drummond Academical Questions, Chapter 3, instead of inveighing against the guilt and absurdity of atheism, demonstrated its falsehood, his conduct would have been more suited to the modesty of the skeptic and the toleration of the philosopher. Chameleons feed on light and air, poets' food is love and fame. O weep for Adonis, he is dead. Peace. He is not dead, he doth not sleep, he hath wakened from the dream of life. There is eloquence in the tongueless wind, and a melody in the flowing brooks and the rustling of the reeds beside them, which by their inconceivable relation to something within the soul, awaken the spirits to a dance of breathless rapture, and bring tears of mysterious tenderness to the eyes, like the enthusiasm of patriotic success, or the voice of one beloved singing to you alone. One word is too often profaned for me to profane it, one feeling too falsely disdained for thee to disdain it. One hope too like despair for prudence to smother. I can give not what men call love, but wilt thou accept not the worship the heart lifts above and heaven rejects not? The desire of the moth for the star, the devotion of something afar from the sphere of our sorrow. Sounds of vernal showers on the twinkling grass, rain awaken flowers, all that ever was joyous, and clear, and fresh, thy music doth surpass. Title: To the moon, art thou pale for weariness of climbing heaven, and gazing on the earth, wandering companionless among the stars that have a different birth, and ever-changing, like a joyless eye that finds no object worth its constancy? Kiss me, so long but as a kiss may last. The splendors of the firmament of time may be eclipsed, but are extinguished not. Like stars to their appointed height they climb, and death is a low mist which cannot blot the brightness it may veil. All love is sweet, given or received. Sorrow, terror, anguish, despair itself are often the chosen expressions of an approximation to the highest good. Our sympathy in tragic fiction depends on this principle. Tragedy delights by affording a shadow of the pleasure which exists in pain. This is the source also of the melancholy which is inseparable from the sweetest melody. The pleasure that is in sorrow is sweeter than the pleasure of pleasure itself. In fact, the truth cannot be communicated until it is perceived. Human vanity is so constituted that it stiffens before difficulties. The more an object conceals itself from our eyes, the greater the effort we make to seize it, because it pricks our pride, it excites our curiosity, and it appears interesting. In fighting for his God everyone, in fact, fights only for the interest of his own vanity, which, of all the passions produced by the malorganization of society, is the quickest to take offense, and the most capable of committing the greatest follies. My father Time is weak and grey with waiting for a better day. See how idiot-like he stands, fumbling with his palsied hands. Design must be proved before a designer can be inferred. Whatever strengthens and purifies the affections, enlarges the imagination, and adds spirit to sense, is useful. How wonderful is death! Death and his brother sleep. He has outsoared the shadow of our night, envy and calumny and hate and pain, and that unrest which men miscall delight, can touch him not and torture not again. From the contagion of the world's slow stain, he is secure. The Galilean is not a favorite of mine. So far from owing him any thanks for his favor, I cannot avoid confessing that I owe a secret grudge to his carpentership. Commerce has set the mark of selfishness, the signet of its all-enslaving power, upon a shining ore, and called it gold, before whose image bow the vulgar great, the vainly rich, the miserable proud, the mob of peasants, nobles, priests, and kings, and with blind feelings reverence the power that grinds them to the dust of misery. The desire of the moth for the star, of the night for the morrow, the devotion to something afar from the sphere of our sorrow. If we reason, we would be understood; if we imagine, we would that the airy children of our brain were born anew within another's; if we feel, we would that another's nerves should vibrate to our own, that the beams of their eyes should kindle at once and mix and melt into our own, that lips of motionless ice should not reply to lips quivering and burning with the heart's best blood. This is love. If a person's religious ideas correspond not with your own, love him nevertheless. Peace, peace. He is not dead, he doth not sleep, he hath awakened from the dream of life; 'tis we, who lost in stormy visions, keep with phantoms an unprofitable strife. It is impossible that had Bonaparte descended from a race of vegetable feeders that he could have had either the inclination or the power to ascend the throne of the Bourbons. The beauty of the internal nature cannot be so far concealed by its accidental vesture, but that the spirit of its form shall communicate itself to the very disguise and indicate the shape it hides from the manner in which it is worn. A majestic form and graceful motions will express themselves through the most barbarous and tasteless costume. I wish no living thing to suffer pain. Thou hast a voice, great mountain, to repeal large codes of fraud and woe, not understood by all, but which the wise, and great, and good interpret, or make felt, or deeply feel. Sing again, with your dear voice revealing a tone of some world far from ours, where music and moonlight and feeling are one. I silently laugh at my own cenotaph, and out of the caverns of rain, like a child from the womb, like a ghost from the tomb, I arise and unbuild it again. Jesus Christ represented God as the principle of all good, the source of all happiness, the wise and benevolent creator and preserver of all living things. But the interpreters of his doctrines have confounded the good and the evil principle. Let the advocate of animal food force himself to a decisive experiment on its fitness, and as Plutarch recommends, tear a living lamb with his teeth, and plunging his head into its vitals, slake his thirst with the steaming blood. When fresh from the deed of horror, let him revert to the irresistible instincts of nature that would rise in judgment against it, and say, "Nature formed me for such work as this." Then, and then only, would he be consistent. Reviewers, with some rare exceptions, are a most stupid and malignant race. As a bankrupt thief turns thief-taker in despair, so an unsuccessful author turns critic. The pilgrim of eternity, whose fame over his living head like heaven is bent, an early but enduring monument, came, veiling all the lightnings of his song in sorrow. Those who love not their fellow beings live unfruitful lives, and prepare for their old age a miserable grave. The odious and disgusting aristocracy of wealth is built upon the ruins of all that is good in chivalry or republicanism, and luxury is the forerunner of a barbarism scarcely capable of cure. This lake exceeds anything I ever beheld in beauty. Peter was dull, he was at first dull, oh, so dull, so very dull. Whether he talked, wrote, or rehearsed, still with his dullness was he cursed, dull, beyond all conception, dull. Of planets, struggling fierce towards heaven's free wilderness. Duty and dereliction guide thee back to solitude. A wild dissolving bliss over my frame he breathed, approaching near, and bent his eyes of kindling tenderness near mine, and on my lips impressed a lingering kiss. Nothing of him that doth fade but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. All things are sold, the very light of heaven is venal, earth's unsparing gifts of love, the smallest and most despicable things that lurk in the abysses of the deep, all objects of our life, even life itself, and the poor pittance which the laws allow of liberty, the fellowship of man, those duties which his heart of human love should urge him to perform instinctively, are bought and sold as in a public mart of not disguising selfishness, that sets on each its price, the stamp mark of her reign. And the rose like a nymph to the bath addressed, which unveiled the depth of her glowing breast, till, fold after fold, to the fainting air, the soul of her beauty and love lay bare. The soul's joy lies in doing. Among true and real friends, all is common, and were ignorance and envy and superstition banished from the world, all mankind would be friend. The one remains, the many change and pass, heaven's light forever shines, earth's shadows fly, life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity, until death tramples it to fragments. It is among men of genius and science that atheism alone is found. Christianity indeed has equaled Judaism in the atrocities, and exceeded it in the extent of its desolation. 11 millions of men, women, and children have been killed in battle, butchered in their sleep, burned to death at public festivals of sacrifice, poisoned, tortured, assassinated, and pillaged in the spirit of the religion of peace, and for the glory of the most merciful God. Religion. But for thee, prolific fiend, who peoplest earth with demons, hell with men, and heaven with slaves. I love all waste and solitary places, where we taste the pleasure of believing what we see is boundless, as we wish our souls to be. I was an infant when my mother went to see an atheist burned. She took me there. The dark-robed priests were met around the pile, the multitude was gazing silently, and as the culprit passed with dauntless mien, tempered disdain in his unaltering eye, mixed with a quiet smile, shone calmly forth, the thirsty fire crept round his manly limbs, his resolute eyes were scorched to blindness soon, his death-pang rent my heart. The insensate mob uttered a cry of triumph, and I wept. "Weep not, child," cried my mother, "for that man has said, there is no God. Death will come when thou art dead, soon, too soon." Necessity, thou mother of the world. Jealousy's eyes are green. When you can discover where the fresh colors of the faded flower abide, or the music of the broken lyre, seek life among the dead. Such are the anxious and fearful contemplations of the common observer, though the popular religion often prevents him from confessing them even to himself. Here I swear, and as I break my oath may eternity blast me, here I swear that never will I forgive Christianity. It is the only point on which I allow myself to encourage revenge. Oh, how I wish I were the Antichrist, that it were mine to crush the demon, to hurl him to his native hell never to rise again. I expect to gratify some of this insatiable feeling in poetry. It is only by hearsay, by word of mouth passed down from generation to generation, that whole peoples adore the God of their fathers and of their priests. Authority, confidence, submission and custom with them take the place of conviction or of proofs. They prostrate themselves and pray, because their fathers taught them to prostrate themselves and pray. But why did their fathers fall on their knees? Ah! What a divine religion might be found out if charity were really made the principle of it instead of faith. The old laws of England, they whose reverent heads with age are grey, children of a wiser day, and whose solemn voice must be thine own echo liberty. Wild spirit, which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, oh, hear. What is love? It is that powerful attraction towards all that we conceive, or fear, or hope beyond ourselves. I love all waste and solitary places. Strange thoughts beget strange deeds. As belief is a passion of the mind, no degree of criminality is attachable to disbelief. Near that a dusty paint-box, some odd hooks, a half-burnt match, an ivory block, 3 books, where conic sections, spherics, logarithms, to great Laplace, from Saunderson and Sims, lie heaped in their harmonious disarray of figures, disentangle them who may. Lie bills and calculations much perplexed, with steamboats, frigates, and machinery quaint traced over them in blue and yellow paint. There are two Italies. The one is the most sublime and lovely contemplation that can be conceived by the imagination of man, the other is the most degraded, disgusting, and odious. What do you think? Young women of rank actually eat, you will never guess what, garlic. Our poor friend Lord Byron is quite corrupted by living among these people, and in fact, is going on in a way not worthy of him. Revenge and wrong bring forth their kind, the foul cubs like their parents are. Oh, that simplicity and innocence its own unvalued work so seldom knows. We know not what we do when we speak words. Where art thou, beloved tomorrow? When young and old, and strong and weak, rich and poor, through joy and sorrow, thy sweet smiles we ever seek, in thy place ah. Well-a-day! We find the thing we fled today. Thou shoreless flood, which in thy ebb and flow claspest the limits of mortality. Swiftly walk o'er the western wave, spirit of night. Out of the misty eastern cave, where, all the long and lone daylight, thou wovest dreams of joy and fear, which make thee terrible and dear, swift be thy flight. I see the waves upon the shore, like light dissolved in star showers, thrown. Unfathomable sea, whose waves are years, ocean of time, whose waters of deep woe are brackish with the salt of human tears. Thou shoreless flood, which in thy ebb and flow claspest the limits of mortality, and sick of prey, yet howling on for more, vomitest thy wrecks on its inhospitable shore, treacherous in calm, and terrible in storm, who shall put forth on thee, unfathomable sea? I am not much of a hand at love songs, you see I mingle metaphysics with even this, but perhaps in this age of philosophy that may be excused. Oh! I burn with impatience for the moment of the dissolution of intolerance, it has injured me. Until the mind can love, and admire, and trust, and hope, and endure, reasoned principles of moral conduct are seeds cast upon the highway of life which the unconscious passenger tramples into dust. Belief is involuntary, nothing involuntary is meritorious or reprehensible. A man ought not to be considered worse or better for his belief. In proportion as a man is selfish, so far has he receded from the motive which constitutes virtue. Thy words are like a cloud of winged snakes. It is our will that thus enchains us to permitted ill. We might be otherwise, we might be all we dream of happy, high, majestical. Where is the love, beauty, and truth we seek, but in our mind? And if we were not weak, should we be less in deed than in desire? The pale stars are gone. For the sun, their swift shepherd, to their folds them compelling, in the depths of the dawn, hastes, in meteor eclipsing array, and the flea beyond his blue dwelling, as fawns flee the leopard. I cannot endure the horror, the evil, which comes to self in solitude. Some say that gleams of a remoter world visit the soul in sleep, that death is slumber, and that its shapes the busy thoughts outnumber of those who wake and live. The babe is at peace within the womb, the corpse is at rest within the tomb. We begin in what we end. Man is of soul and body, formed for deeds of high resolve, on fancy's boldest wing. The nature of a narrow and malevolent spirit is so essentially incompatible with happiness as to render it inaccessible to the influences of the benignant God. The world's great age begins anew, the golden years return, the earth doth like a snake renew her winter weeds outworn, heaven smiles, and faiths and empires gleam, like wrecks of a dissolving dream. So is hope changed for despair, one laid upon the shelf, we take the other. Under heaven's high cope fortune is God, all you endure and do depends on circumstance as much as you. Oh, cease! Must hate and death return? Cease! Must men kill and die? Cease! Drain not to its dregs the urn of bitter prophecy. The world is weary of the past, oh, might it die or rest at last. I pant, I sink, I tremble, I expire. Our Adonais has drunk poisono. What deaf and viperous murderer could crown life's early cup with such a draught of woe? In the golden lightning of the sunken sun o'er which clouds are brightening, thou dost float and run like an unbodied joy whose race is just begun. The discussion of any subject is a right that you have brought into the world with your heart and tongue. Resign your heart's blood before you part with this inestimable privilege of man. Ere Babylon was dust, the Magus Zoroaster, my dead child, met his own image walking in the garden, that apparition, soul of man, he saw. The howl of self-interest is loud, but the heart is black which throbs solely to its note. It is thus that the generality of mankind, whose lot is ignorance, attributes to the divinity, not only the unusual effects which strike them, but moreover the most simple events, of which the causes are the most simple to understand by whomever is able to study them. In a word, man has always respected unknown causes, surprising effects that his ignorance kept him from unraveling. It was on this debris of nature that man raised the imaginary colossus of the divinity. Every time we say that God is the author of some phenomenon, that signifies that we are ignorant of how such a phenomenon was caused by the forces of nature. The advocates of literal interpretation have been the most efficacious enemies of those doctrines whose nature they profess to venerate. Poetry strengthens that faculty which is the organ of the moral nature of man, in the same manner as exercise strengthens a limb. No mistake is more to be deplored than the conception that a system of morals and religion should derive any portion of its authority either from the circumstance of its novelty or its antiquity, that it should be judged excellent, not because it is reasonable or true, but because no person has ever thought of it before, or because it has been thought of from the beginning of time. My neighbor, or my servant, or my child, has done me an injury, and it is just that he should suffer an injury in return. Such is the doctrine which Jesus Christ summoned his whole resources of persuasion to oppose. Jesus Christ opposed with earnest eloquence the panic fears and hateful superstitions which have enslaved mankind for ages. If all the thought which had been expended on the construction of engines of agony and death, the modes of aggression and defense, the raising of armies, and the acquirement of those arts of tyranny and falsehood without which mixed multitudes could neither be led or governed, had been employed to promote the true welfare, and extend the real empire of man, how different would have been the present situation of human society. Fame, power, and gold are loved for their own sakes, are worshipped with a blind, habitual idolatry. Every man, in proportion to his virtue, considers himself, with respect to the great community of mankind, as the steward and guardian of their interests in the property which he chances to possess. Every man, in proportion to his wisdom, sees the manner in which it is his duty to employ the resources which the consent of mankind has entrusted to his discretion. Peace is in the grave. The conceptions which any nation or individual entertains of the God of its popular worship may be inferred from their own actions and opinions, which are the subjects of their approbation among their fellow men. The emptiness and folly of retaliation are apparent from every example which can be brought forward. Not only Jesus Christ, but the most eminent professors of every sect of philosophy, have reasoned against this futile superstition. The practice of utter sincerity towards other men would avail to no good end, if they were incapable of practicing it towards their own minds. In fact, truth cannot be communicated until it is perceived. It is vain philosophy that supposes more causes than are exactly adequate to explain the phenomena of things. Oh, that the wise from their bright minds would kindle such lamps within the dome of this dim world that the pale name of priest might shrink and dwindle into the hell from which it first was furled. Love's very pain is sweet. The allegory of Adam and Eve eating of the tree of evil, and entailing upon their posterity the wrath of God and the loss of everlasting life, admits of no other explanation than the disease and crime that have flowed from unnatural diet. I have drunken deep of joy. We live and move and think, but we are not the creators of our own origin and existence. We are not the arbiters of every motion of our own complicated nature, we are not the masters of our own imaginations and moods of mental being. This is heaven, when pain and evil cease, and when the benignant principle, untrammeled and uncontrolled, visits in the fullness of its power the universal frame of things. The thoughts which the word God suggests to the human mind are susceptible of as many variations as human minds themselves. The rich have become richer, and the poor have become poorer, and the vessel of the state is driven between the Scylla and Charybdis of anarchy and despotism. Nature rejects the monarch, not the man, the subject, not the citizen. The man of virtuous soul commands not, nor obeys. The warm sun is failing, the bleak wind is wailing, the bare boughs are sighing, the pale flowers are dying, and the year on the earth her deathbed, in a shroud of leaves dead, is lying. No more let life divide what death can join together. A Christian, a deist, a Turk, and a Jew, have equal rights, they are men and brethren. Poetry is not like reasoning, a power to be exerted according to the determination of the will. A man cannot say, I will compose poetry. The greatest poet even cannot say it, for the mind in creation is as a fading coal, which some invisible influence, like an inconstant wind, awakens to transitory brightness, and the conscious portions of our natures are unprophetic either of its approach or its departure. O world! O life! O time! On whose last steps I climb! Sow seed but let no tyrant reap, find wealth let no impostor heap, weave robes let not the idle wear, forge arms in your defense to bear. Yes, marriage is hateful, detestable. A kind of ineffable, sickening disgust seizes my mind when I think of this most despotic, most unrequited fetter which prejudice has forged to confine its energies. But I am chained to time, and cannot thence depart. A poet, as he is the author to others of the highest wisdom, pleasure, virtue, and glory, so he ought personally to be the happiest, the best, the wisest, and the most illustrious of men. I am convinced that there can be no regeneration of mankind until laughter is put down. Music, when soft voices die, vibrates in the memory. Odors, when sweet violets sicken, live within the sense they quicken. We are all Greeks. Our laws, our literature, our religion, our arts, have their root in Greece. A story of particular facts is a mirror which obscures and distorts that which should be beautiful. Poetry is a mirror which makes beautiful that which it distorts. Image of rugged cliffs, and so thy thoughts, when thou art gone, love itself shall slumber on. God is a hypothesis, and, as such, stands in need of proof. the onus probandi rests on the theist. The crime of inquiry is one which religion never has forgiven. Sometimes it's better to put love into hugs than to put it into words. Soul meets soul on lovers' lips. Virtue owns a more eternal foe than force or fraud, old custom, legal crime, and bloody faith, the foulest birth of time. When merciless ambition, or mad zeal, has led two hosts of dupes to battlefield, that, blind, they there may dig each other's graves, and call the sad work glory. Contemporary criticism only represents the amount of ignorance genius has to contend with. Time will reverse the judgment of the vulgar. Their errors have been weighed and found to have been dust in the balance. If their sins were as scarlet, they are now white as snow. They have been washed in the blood of the Mediator and the Redeemer, Time. The same means that have supported every other popular belief have supported Christianity. War, imprisonment, and falsehood, deeds of unexampled and incomparable atrocity have made it what it is. Whatever may be his true and final destination, there is a spirit within him at enmity with nothingness and dissolution. This is the character of all life and being. I know the cause of all human disappointment, worldly prejudice. Titles are tinsel, power a corrupter, glory a bubble, and excessive wealth a libel on its possessor. I am gone into the fields to take what this sweet hour yields. Reflection, you may come tomorrow, sit by the fireside with sorrow. You with the unpaid bill, despair, you, tiresome verse reciter, care, I will pay you in the grave, death will listen to your stave. Think ye by gazing on each other's eyes to multiply your lovely selves. Better than all measures of delightful sound, better than all treasures that in books are found, thy skill to poet were, thou scorner of the ground. Words are but holy as the deeds they cover. I love tranquil solitude, and such society as is quiet, wise, and good. Between thee and me what difference? But thou dost possess the things I seek, not love them less. Darest thou amid the varied multitude to live alone, an isolated thing? In each human heart terror survives the ravin it has gorged, the loftiest fear all that they would disdain to think were true. Hypocrisy and custom make their minds the fanes of many a worship, now outworn. They dare not devise good for man's estate, and yet they know not that they do not dare. The quick dreams, the passion-winged ministers of thought. Man, who wert once a despot and a slave, a dupe and a deceiver. A decay, a traveler from the cradle to the grave through the dim night of this immortal day. Less oft peace in Shelley's mind, than calm in waters seen. Peace is in the grave. The grave hides all things beautiful and good. I am a god and cannot find it there, nor would I seek it, for, though dread revenge, this is defeat, fierce king, not victory. Rough wind, the moanest loud grief too sad for song, wild wind, when sullen cloud knells all the night long, sad storm, whose tears are vain, bare woods, whose branches strain, deep caves and dreary main, wail, for the world's wrong. You would not easily guess all the modes of distress which torture the tenants of earth, and the various evils, which like so many devils, attend the poor souls from their birth. Men of England, wherefore plough for the lords who lay you low? There is no sport in hate where all the rage is on one side. The intense atom glows a moment, then is quenched in a most cold repose. I know the past and thence I will essay to glean a warning for the future, so that man may profit by his errors, and derive experience from his folly. For, when the power of imparting joy is equal to the will, the human soul requires no other heaven. And many more destructions played in this ghastly masquerade, all disguised, even to the eyes, like bishops, lawyers, peers, or spies. Let the blue sky overhead, the green earth on which ye tread, all that must eternal be witness the solemnity. The day becomes more solemn and serene when noon is past, there is a harmony Indiana autumn, and a luster in its sky, which through the summer is not heard or seen, as if it could not be, as if it had not been. Thus let thy power, which like the truth of nature on my passive youth descended, to my onward life supply its calm, to one who worships thee, and every form containing thee, whom, spirit fair, thy spells did bind to fear himself, and love all humankind. For the sensitive plant has no bright flower, radiance and odor are not its dower, it loves, even like love, its deep heart is full, it desires what it has not, the beautiful. Thou art justice ne'er for gold, may thy righteous laws be sold as laws are in England, thou shield'st alike the high and low. Government has no rights, it is a delegation from several individuals for the purpose of securing their own. It is therefore just, only so far as it exists by their consent, useful only so far as it operates to their well-being. The breath of accusation kills an innocent name, and leaves for lame acquittal the poor life, which is a mask without it. He gave man speech, and speech created thought, which is the measure of the universe. I bring fresh showers for the thirsting flowers, from the seas and the streams, I bear light shade for the leaves when laid in their noonday dreams. From my wings are shaken the dews that waken the sweet buds every one, when rocked to rest on their mother's breast, as she dances about the sun. I wield the flail of the lashing hail, and whiten the green plains under, and then again I dissolve it in rain, and laugh as I pass in thunder. As I lay asleep in Italy there came a voice from over the sea, and with great power it forth led me to walk in the visions of poesy. But Greece and her foundations are built below the tide of war, based on the crystalline sea of thought and its eternity. Her citizens, imperial spirits, rule the present from the past, on all this world of men inherits their seal is set. What is freedom? Ye can tell that which slavery is, too well, for its very name has grown to an echo of your own. Gentleness, virtue, wisdom, and endurance, these are the seals of that most firm assurance which bars the pit over destruction's strength, and if, within firm hand, eternity, mother of many acts and hours, should free the serpent that would clasp her with his length, these are the spells by which to reassume an empire o'er the disentangled doom. The awful shadow of some unseen power floats though unseen among us, visiting this various world with as inconstant wing as summer winds that creep from flower to flower. Like moonbeams that behind some piny mountain shower, it visits with inconstant glance each human heart and countenance, like hues and harmonies of evening, like clouds in starlight widely spread, like memory of music fled, like aught that for its grace may be dear, and yet dearer for its mystery. The world is weary of the past, oh, might it die or rest at last. Age cannot love destroy, but perfidy can blast the flower, even when in most unwary hour it blooms in fancy's bower. Age cannot love destroy, but perfidy can rend the shrine in which its vermeil splendors shine. Be your strong and simple words keen to wound as sharpened swords, and wide as targes let them be, with their shade to cover ye. Let there be light, said Liberty, and like sunrise from the sea, Athens arose. How beautiful is sunset when the glow of heaven descends upon a land like thee, thou paradise of exiles, Italy. No man has a right to disturb the public peace, by personally resisting the execution of a law however bad. He ought to acquiesce, using at the same time the utmost powers of his reason, to promote its repeal. Naught may endure but mutability. Till the future dares forget the past, his fate and fame shall be an echo and a light unto eternity. O'er Egypt's land of memory floods are level, and they are thine, O Nile. And well thou knowest the soul-sustaining airs and blasts of evil, and fruits, and poison spring where'er thou flowest. The most refined abstractions of logic conduct to a view of life, which, though startling to the apprehension, is, in fact, that which the habitual sense of its repeated combinations has extinguished in us. It strips, as it were, the painted curtain from this scene of things. I confess that I am one of those who are unable to refuse my assent to the conclusions of those philosophers who assert that nothing exists but as it is perceived. Lightning my pilot sits, in a cavern under is fettered the thunder, it struggles and howls at fits, over earth and ocean, with gentle motion, this pilot is guiding me, lured by the love of the genii that move in the depths of the purple sea, over the rills, and the crags, and the hills, over the lakes and the plains, wherever he dream. Under mountain or stream the spirit he loves remains, and I all the while bask in heaven's blue smile, whilst he is dissolving in rains. You are now in London, that great sea, whose ebb and flow at once is deaf and loud, and on the shore vomits its wrecks, and still howls on for more. Yet in its depth what treasures! Not the swart pariah in some Indian grove, lone, lean, and hunted by his brother's hate, hath drunk so deep the cup of bitter fate as that poor wretch who cannot love. He bears a load which nothing can remove, a killing, withering weight. A husband and wife ought to continue united so long as they love each other. Any law which should bind them to cohabitation for one moment after the decay of their affection would be a most intolerable tyranny, and the most unworthy of toleration. So soon as this want or power, of love, is dead, man becomes the living sepulchre of himself, and what yet survives is the mere husk of what once he was. What? Alive, and so bold, O earth! True love in this differs from gold and clay, that to divide is not to take away. Love is like understanding, that grows bright, gazing on many truths. Thou demandest what is love. It is that powerful attraction towards all that we conceive, or fear, or hope beyond ourselves, when we find within our own thoughts the chasm of an insufficient void, and seek to awaken in all things that are, a community with what we experience within ourselves. Love. Dearest, sweetest power! How much are we indebted to thee! How much superior are even thy miseries to the pleasures which arise from other sources! There is no real wealth but the labor of people. Were the mountains of gold and silver, the world would not be one grain of corn the richer, no one comfort would be added to the human race. I love love, though he has wings, and like light can flee. You ought to love all mankind, nay, every individual of mankind. You ought not to love the individuals of your domestic circles less, but to love those who exist beyond it more. I never was attached to that great sect, whose doctrine is, that each one should select out of the crowd a mistress or a friend, and all the rest, though fair and wise, commend to cold oblivion, though it is in the code of modern morals, and the beaten road which those poor slaves with weary footsteps tread, who travel to their home among the dead by the broad highway of the world, and so with one chained friend perhaps a jealous foe, the dreariest and the longest journey go. Where is perfection? Where I cannot reach. Persevere even though hell and destruction should yawn beneath your feet. This, and no other, is justice, to consider, under all the circumstances and consequences of a particular case, how the greatest quantity and purest quality of happiness will ensue from any action, there is no other justice. Gold is a living god and rules in scorn all earthly things but virtue. Mankind, transmitting from generation to generation the legacy of accumulated vengeances, and pursuing with the feelings of duty the misery of their fellow beings, have not failed to attribute to the universal cause a character analogous with their own. The image of this invisible, mysterious being is more or less excellent and perfect, resembles more or less its original in proportion to the perfection of the mind on which it is impressed. The great community of mankind had been subdivided into 10,000 communities, each organized for the ruin of the other. In the firm expectation that when London shall be a habitation of bitterns, when St. Paul and Westminster Abbey shall stand shapeless and nameless ruins in the midst of an unpeopled marsh, when the piers of Waterloo Bridge shall become the nuclei of islets of reeds and osiers, and cast the jagged shadows of their broken arches on the solitary stream, some transatlantic commentator will be weighing in the scales of some new and now unimagined system of criticism the respective merits of the Bells and the Fudges and their historians. Songs consecrate to truth and liberty. Spirit of beauty, that dost consecrate with thine own hues all thou dost shine upon of human thought or form, where art thou gone? Why dost thou pass away and leave our state, this dim vast vale of tears, vacant and desolate? Ask why the sunlight not for ever weaves rainbows o'er yon mountain river, why aught should fail and fade that once is shown? Why fear and dream and death and birth cast on the daylight of this earth such gloom? Why man has such a scope for love and hate, despondency and hope? Mont Blanc yet gleams on high, the power is there, the still and solemn power of many sights and many sounds, and much of life and death. In the long glare of day, the snows descend upon that mountain, none beholds them there, nor when the flakes burn in the sinking sun, or the sunbeams dart through them. And many an antenatal tomb where butterflies dream of the life to come. Woe is me! The winged words on which my soul would pierce into the heights of love's rare universe, are chains of lead around its flight of fire. I pant, I sink, I tremble, I expire. Let me set my mournful ditty to a merry measure. Thou wilt never come for pity, thou wilt come for pleasure. Pity then will cut away those cruel wings, and thou wilt stay. Whence are we, and why are we? Of what scene the actors or spectators? The encomium of one incapable of flattery is indeed flattering. Alas! I have nor hope nor health, nor peace within nor calm around, nor that content surpassing wealth the sage in meditation found. Lost Echo sits amid the voiceless mountains, and feeds her grief. Obedience indeed is only the pitiful and cowardly egotism of him who thinks that he can do something better than reason. Like a glowworm golden, in a dell of dew, scattering unbeholden its aerial blue among the flowers and grass which screen it from the view. Life, like a dome of many-colored glass, stains the white radiance of eternity. It is not a merit to tolerate, but rather a crime to be intolerant. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. I bleed. Narrow the heart that loves, the brain that contemplates, the life that wears, the spirit that creates one object, and one form, and builds thereby a sepulchre for its eternity. Nothing in the world is single, all things by a law divine, in one spirit meet and mingle. Why not I with thine? There is no God. This negation must be understood solely to affect a creative deity. The hypothesis of a pervading spirit co-eternal with the universe remains unshaken. If he is infinitely good, what reason should we have to fear him? If he is infinitely wise, what doubts should we have concerning our future? If he knows all, why warn him of our needs and fatigue him with our prayers? If he is everywhere, why erect temples to him? If he is just, why fear that he will punish the creatures that he has filled with weaknesses? My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. If God has spoken, why is the world not convinced? January gray is here, like a sexton by her grave. February bears the bier, March with grief doth howl and rave, and April weeps. But, O ye hours, follow with May's fairest flowers. Ah, woe is me! Winter is come and gone, but grief returns with the revolving year. Are we not formed, as notes of music are, for one another, though dissimilar? All high poetry is infinite, it is as the first acorn, which contained all oaks potentially. A single word even may be a spark of inextinguishable thought. And on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare the lone and level sands stretch far away. For there are deeds which have no form, sufferings which have no tongue. To hearts which near each other move from evening close to morning light, the night is good, because, my love, they never say good night. Dust to the dust. But the pure spirit shall flow back to the burning fountain whence it came, a portion of the eternal. Worse than a bloody hand is a hard heart. O heart, and mind, and thoughts! What thing do you hope to inherit in the grave below? Within my heart is the lamp of love, and that is day. Joy, once lost, is pain. I have neither curiosity, interest, pain nor pleasure, in anything, good or evil, they can say of me. I feel only a slight disgust, and a sort of wonder that they presume to write my name. Honor sits smiling at the sail of truth. A sensitive plant in a garden grew, and the young winds fed it with silver dew, and it opened its fan like leaves to the light, and closed them beneath the kisses of night. To suffer woes which hope thinks infinite, to forgive wrongs darker than death or night. This alone is life, joy, empire, victory. I arise from dreams of thee, and a spirit in my feet has led me, who knows how, to thy chamber window, sweet. Spirit, patience, gentleness, all that can adorn and bless art thou. Let deeds, not words, express thine exceeding loveliness. Ere midnight's frown and morning's smile, ere thou and peace may meet. When the lamp is shattered the light in the dust lies dead, when the cloud is scattered the rainbow's glory is shed. I love snow, snow, and all the forms of radiant frost. I wield the flail of the lashing hail, and whiten the green plains under, and then again I dissolve it in rain, and laugh as I pass in thunder. All love is sweet given or returned. Common as light is love, and its familiar voice wearies not ever. Rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number, shake your chains to earth like dew which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. The jealous keys of truth's eternal doors. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou, from whose unseen presence the leaves dead are driven, like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. The cemetery is an open space among the ruins, covered in winter with violets and daisies. It might make one in love with death, to think that one should be buried in so sweet a place. A dream has power to poison sleep. Heaven's ebon vault studded with stars unutterably bright, through which the moon's unclouded grandeur rolls, seems like a canopy which love has spread to curtain her sleeping world. When the power of imparting joy is equal to the will, the human soul requires no other heaven. Before man can be free, and equal, and truly wise, he must cast aside the chains of habit and superstition, he must strip sensuality of its pomp, and selfishness of its excuses, and contemplate actions and objects as they really are. It is only by softening and disguising dead flesh by culinary preparation that it is rendered susceptible of mastication or digestion, and that the sight of its bloody juices and raw horror does not excite intolerable loathing and disgust. The everlasting universe of things flows through the mind, and rolls its rapid waves, now dark, now glittering, now reflecting gloom, now lending splendor, where from secret springs the source of human thought its tribute brings. We rest, a dream has power to poison sleep. We rise, one wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same, for, be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow, naught may endure but mutability. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are those who have preserved internal sanctity of soul, who are conscious of no secret deceit, who are the same in act as they are in desire, who conceal no thought, no tendencies of thought, from their own conscience, who are faithful and sincere witnesses, before the tribunal of their own judgments, of all that passes within their mind. Such as these shall see God. I have made my bed in charnels and on coffins, where black death keeps record of the trophies won. Life may change, but it may fly not, hope may vanish, but can die not, truth be veiled, but still it burneth, love repulsed, but it returneth. Love withers under constraints, its very essence is liberty, it is compatible neither with obedience, jealousy, nor fear. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and, by the incantation of this verse, scatter, as from an unextinguished hearth ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. Be through my lips to unawakened earth the trumpet of a prophecy. O, wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? The young moon has fed her exhausted horn with the sunset's fire. The great secret of morals is love, or a going out of our nature, and an identification of ourselves with the beautiful which exists in thought, action, or person, not our own. A man, to be greatly good, must imagine intensely and comprehensively. He must put himself in the place of another and of many others. The pains and pleasure of his species must become his own. The great instrument of moral good is the imagination. And spring arose on the garden fair, like the spirit of love felt everywhere, and each flower and herb on earth's dark breast rose from the dreams of its wintry rest. Familiar acts are beautiful through love. I arise from dreams of thee in the first sweet sleep of night, when the winds are breathing low, and the stars are shining bright. Away, away, from men and towns, to the wild wood and the downs, to the silent wilderness, where the soul need not repress its music. Love's very pain is sweet, but its reward is in the world divine which, if not here, it builds beyond the grave. Man who man would be, must rule the empire of himself. One nightingale in an interfluus would satiate the hungry dark with melody.